This video is sponsored by Incogni. Hi friends, today we're going to talk about one of the worst, if not the worst things that happened to the good old Blood Angels since their glorious dad Sanguinius got pulped by known jerk Mr. Horus Heresy. So, find your favorite red shirt, do a little cry about your lost dad, grab a can of Raid, and let's get ready to learn all about the devastation of Baal. The devastation of Baal was a desperate last stand by the Imperial forces to protect the world of Baal against the Tyranid menace. The clash was the ultimate conclusion to the Third Tyrannic War and was a pivotal moment in the history of the Blood Angels. Which, also, the Imperium is constantly on the defense from insidious threats. Much like how Incogni is constantly on the defense from data brokers taking and selling your personal information. Data brokers can be quite dangerous. Malicious ones may weaponize your personal information to carry out scary things like scams, identity theft, and scam likely calls. Ooh! And there can be hundreds of sites that have your information. Before using Incogni, I found an alarming amount of sites with my phone number and address just from Googling my name. But after using Incogni for a while, they have taken my data off of over 400 sites, and I have to dig deep to find any with my info on it, which is quite comforting to me. Best of all though, I basically had to do nothing to get this information taken down. Once given permission from you, Incogni goes out and does everything needed to remove your personal information from these data brokers. This saved a lot of time for me, as some of these data broker websites intentionally made it a long and arduous process to get my information taken down. So, if you're interested, click the link in the description, incogni.com/crackduck, and use the promo code crackduck to get 60% off on the annual plan. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring this video. Anyways though, Baal is the wasteland homeworld of the Blood Angels, and Devastation is one of the best, if not the best, Transformers games. Oops, wait, no, I mean Devastation is what those goofy little critters the Tyranids plan to carry out on Baal so that they could continue their warpath throughout the galaxy and consume that sweet, sweet biomass. And the devastation of Baal began off of Baal on its sister system of Kryptos. The Kryptos system was known as the Krypton Shield and was important to the Blood Angel since it was the first line of defense for the world of Baal. The Krypton Shield was attacked by the infamous High Fleet Leviathan on their never-ending quest to satiate the Great Devourer's never-ending hunger. Across the Krypton Shield, the combined Imperial force of the Blood Angels, Flesh Terrors, Sisters of Battle, Imperial Guard, and other dudes fought back the gargantuan hordes of Tyranids. On the first day, the Imperium successfully killed millions of Tyranids thanks to strategies learned in prior Tyrannic wars, cunning leadership, and savage heroics. However, killing millions of Tyranids means little when there's like a bazillion of them. And these early victories meant little for the Imperials as Leviathan simply adapted to the Imperial tactics and unleashed their hive in full force. This second wave was devastating, and in a mere day, nearly all of the shield worlds of Kryptos were decimated as the unending swarms utterly crushed the Imperial defenders. The remaining Imperials fell back and were reinforced by Ultra Mega Chad, Louis Dante, and his Blood Angels. Dante and his boys secured some minor victories, but it was clear that these efforts were futile. Meanwhile, on another world in the Kryptos system, Asphodex, the Mithrid dynasty was awoken by Anrakir the Traveler. These Necrons formed a temporary alliance with the Blood Angel to repel the Tyranids and activate an ancient Necron tier weapon, the Star Flame. Through their combined efforts, the Necrons and the Imperials activated the weapon, and with a heavy heart, Dante decided to make a huge sacrifice to defend the greater Imperium. He knew that the Hive would only continue to grow as it consumed the biomass of the Imperial defenders, and it would soon be unstoppable. So, he used the Star Flame to destroy one of Kryptos' twin stars, and then he used it to further devastate the Tyranid forces along with his own when he shot the Star Flame across the system, destroying everything in its wake. This severely crippled Leviathan and bought the Blood Angels and other Imperials the time they needed to evacuate survivors and fortify Baal for the Leviathan counterattack. And, unfortunately for the Marines, they'd be mostly alone in their defense as most of the Guard and Sisters were killed in the Kryptos campaign or set off to reinforce Cadia since a little thing called the 13th Black Crusade was also happening at this time. So then, Dante prepared his chapter and remaining forces as he called upon all of the Sons of Sanguinius to return to their homeworld to stage their epic defense. And so, shortly before the Tyranids launched their invasion, over 25 successor chapters joined the Blood Angel forces, even including some renegade chapters like the Knights of Blood. Notably, the Lamenters did not show up, which This is honestly probably for the best, as their cosmic bad luck probably wouldn't have helped in this apocalyptic battle. Anyways, this congregation of Blood Angel successors was the largest family reunion for the Sons of Sanguinius since the heresy, and with their combined might, Dante had command of nearly 30,000 Marines. Many Marines gathered to coordinate their defense in the city of Angel's Fall, which is where Sanguinius first landed as a little baby Primarch. The Marines would be split into 4 forces to defend their home. You see, Baal itself has 2 Baals, its moons, Baal Primus and Baal Secundus. And so, about a fifth of the Marines, notably including the Flesh Terrors, were sent to Baal Primus, a fifth to Baal Secundus, and a fifth to stage an orbital offense, and then the rest to the planet of Baal. On Baal and its balls, the Marines fortified their fortress monastery, void shield generators, gun batteries, and other significant structures. They also used some of Baal's natural hazards to fortify, one notable one being a moat of the deadly creature known as Thirstwater. This is an ambush predator that looks like water and kills whatever comes into contact with it, which is pretty badass. Anyways though, Leviathan would arrive at Baal seeking vengeance and a tasty snack after the events in Cryptus, and they launched their assault. The Battle of Baal started with a huge orbital clash of hundreds of ships on both sides fighting it out in Baal's orbit. And by hundreds of ships on both sides, I actually mean the Marines had hundreds of ships and the Knights had tens and thousands of ships. Despite being greatly outnumbered, the Marines put up a valiant fight and used nuclear missiles to level the playing field a bit. But despite the Marines' great efforts, the Tyranid Horde was able to outmaneuver the Marines and unveiled a secret second fleet that ambushed and crushed the remains of the Marines' orbital defenses. And even after taking heavy losses, the Tyranids still had a huge number of bugs to unleash on the planet. So, with the orbital defenses mangled, Leviathan made planetfall and moonfall. Wait, the bugs made moonfall? Absolute cinema! But anyways, the Tyranids began their assault with a tried and true tactic of sending endless waves of endless bugs at the enemies. This strategy proved effective as the Marines were already vastly outnumbered. And just like in the Void, the Tyranids would rapidly adapt to any strategy the Marines could muster. And to make matters even worse, a warp rift was opening in the system, and the Angels had to send an elite team of librarians to mend it. This meant that, beyond the looming threat of chaos joining the fray, the Blood Angels didn't have access to their most powerful character, the ultra mega super insano madman Lord of Death Mephiston. And so, since he was busy trying to mend a warp rift with some other librarians, he didn't get to do much bug hunting other than single-handedly annihilating a giant swarm of Tyranids crazy style on the way to the rift. But anyways, on all fronts the Angels were being battered down and losing Marines at an unacceptable rate. Great heroes of countless battles were being cut down by the savage claws of Leviathan. The Hive Mind had also sent Gene Stealers, Lictors, and Raveners behind Blood Angel lines in order to completely surround the hopeless defenders. They erupted from within the Angels' fortresses and destroyed all they came across. Notably, the Blood Angel neophytes and their sarcophagi were being targeted, which would destroy the Blood Angel's hopes of rebuilding and continuing as a chapter. So, Dante got on his bike and continued to show why he's the coolest Blood Angel maybe ever as he tore through the halls of the Arx Angelicum on an assault bike, cutting and blasting bugs so badassly it would make a White Scar blush. But this was a trap. The Tyranid Gambit to divert Dante away from the main defense had worked, and Elictor was able to destroy the shield generator, and Dante failed to protect the Angel sarcophagi, dooming the Blood Angel's future. This was a decisive move, as the Angels were now besieged by artillery fire and aerial forces, making the swarm even more deadly. Meanwhile, on Baal Secundus, the Swarm Lord had finally appeared and started wreaking havoc on the Imperial defenders, turning the tide of the battle on Secundus. And, if things weren't bad enough, back with Team Mephiston, one of his Psykers fell to the temptation of Khorne, and the ritual had failed, opening the gate for a demonic incursion on Baal Primus. Gulp. And then, if things weren't bad enough, across the galaxy, Cadia had fallen. R.I.P. This fall meant that the Great Rift tore through the galaxy, and this psychic cataclysm fully opened the gate on Baal Primus, allowing the ancient nemesis of the Blood Angels, Kabunda, to manifest. Hell literally broke loose as the demons attacked both the Tyranids and the Imperials. But Luckily for the Space Marines, the huge warp surge temporarily dazed the Tyranid forces, cutting them off from the hive mind for a little bit. In the din of the battle, the Knights of Blood sacrificed themselves so that the Flesh Tearers could fall back to Baal and make their last stand. The Knights Mega Chad Chapter Master Centaur Jewel let himself go to the Black Rage and he tried to solo Kabunda. He of course instantly lost, but it was cool nonetheless. With their sacrifice, the Knights of Blood were redeemed, and Gabriel and the boys were able to escape the planet as the demons killed literally everything on Baal Primus. But luckily, as a consolation prize, the opening of the Great Rift and the arrival of Kabunda did wipe out a large chunk of the Tyranid fleet and gave Dante time to give an awesome speech and inspire his Marines for their final stand. Dante declared all Blood Angels to be Death Company as they were now a doomed chapter about to kill as many Tyranids as they could before their inevitable deaths. The gates of the Tower of Omero were opened again, and those lost to the Black Rage fought alongside their brothers one last time. In this final stand, things went real crazy style as the Blood Angels and Tyranids made a final clash. Dante and his brothers began to fall to the Black Rage and fought more ferociously than ever. The Sanguinor also appeared leading the Legion of the Damned against the Great Devourer, and he guided Dante towards the Swarmlord for an epic final duel. Before fighting the beast, Dante looked into the Swarmlord's eyes and gazed into the vastness of the hive mind and its infinite hunger. For a moment, Dante sympathized with the beast as the red thirst paled in comparison to the Great Devourer's great hunger. And so, before their vicious battle, Dante began to fall to the Black Rage and he saw the beast as Horus, but he warded off the madness and declared that he will die as Dante, not Sanguinius. And at last, Dante and the Swarmlord engaged in their final duel. They traded blows for a while, and eventually Dante's jump pack was destroyed, leaving his armor with limited power. He was then assailed by a psychic attack from the Swarmlord, but he was unwavered, and he shattered the monster's blade. And with his armor failing, Dante lined up a final shot with his Inferno pistol, and fired a shot so intense that it scorched himself and completely vaporized the Swarmlord's vile face. With the Swarmlord dead, Dante collapsed to the floor and accepted his long-awaited death. But then, the Sanguinor appeared, and through the apparition, Sanguinius himself spoke to Dante once more. Dante begged his father to let him finally die, but Sanguinius lamented the fact that Dante's story was not yet over, and he still had purpose. Dante was then revived, and he awoke to the newly resurrected Primarch Robude Guilliman. Guilliman and his indomitable Primaris had saved the remnants of the Blood Angels and helped reclaim Baal from the Tyranids and Chaos Menace. In addition, the Primaris reinforcements would allow the Blood Angels to live on despite the grievous losses they faced. And due to Dante's heroics, Guilliman officially appointed him Regent of the Imperium Nihilus, ushering in a new age of hope for the chapter. Although they were ravaged to just a few hundred Marines, and many of their successor chapters were completely wiped out, they were now able to rebuild with the new Primaris project. And so, Dante and his angels worked towards hunting down the remains of Leviathan and destroying the chaos taint brought on by Kabunda. As for the Tyranids, despite being nearly wiped out by the Marines and Demon forces, Leviathan managed to slip away and regroup. It used the valuable knowledge gained against the Blood Angels to launch the Fourth Tyrannic War after regaining their vast numbers. For the Tyranids' great hunger can never be destroyed. And yeah, that's the devastation of Baal, and the conclusion of the Third Tyrannic War. If you thought that this story was cool, I'd strongly urge you to read the Devastation of Baal novel. I think it's a cool Blood Angels book with a lot of badass moments, especially from Dante, but both sides get cool moments. I intentionally left some things out as to not spoil the entire book, just the major plot points, but it's still a good read. And I think that the Blood Angels and Tyranids are such a natural fit for enemies considering their fighting style and themes, and the parallels between the two are also quite interesting, making for a pretty cool story. But let me know what you thought of this battle and what battles you'd like me to cover next in the comments below. And again, big thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Be sure to click the link in the description and use code CRACKDUCK to get 60% off on the annual plan. Anyways, thank you for watching, and big thanks to the patrons who help me make these cool videos. If you really like my stuff, consider joining the Kazarkan tier and I'll send you a cool sticker. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your super duper hungry pals. Thanks. The Devastation of Baal novel literally starts with a grumpy old man taking a pee-pee, which is kinda peak.